Hello and welcome to Maxim Completum, where we take completing games to a whole new level. Welcome back to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. In the last episode, we finished up our conquest of the Grand Prix, getting 3 stars for every CC in both the main game and DLC. Today, we will be focusing on beating every staff ghost that can be found in the time trials, as well as unlocking the rest of the Kart setups, with the exception of one. To kick things off, we're beginning with 150cc on Mario Circuit. I know that a lot of people may dislike time trials or at least prefer the Grand Prix in versus mode over it, but I personally find that time trials is one of my favorite ways to play the game. Unlike in Grand Prix where you have to balance skill with the RNG factor of CPU as well as what items you get, time trials is nothing but skill based. You need to know what shortcuts to take, where the tricks are, what lines to go in, as well as the overall best setup. There's no RNG involved, but instead it focuses on your skill and your ability to strategize on the spot. Now with that said, there's not really that much for me to say about time trials. It went pretty well for the most part. I'll go over the races that didn't go well, but for the most part it went very well. Base game 150cc, I didn't struggle at all. I don't think I lost a single one. 200cc for the base game was a little bit different. I did lose a couple of races. The first one being Mario Circuit, where I fell extremely far behind on the final lap and decided just to restart. Second try I was able to win, but even then, it was very close. While 150cc seemed to be the much easier option, 200cc, which is what I normally play in my off time, it felt like the ghosts were a lot more difficult, knowing a lot more of the advanced tricks and skips, as well as having overall better driving. In the full unedited version of the gameplay that you could find in the public playlist that I list down below, you'll see that I actually end up struggling quite a bit on some of the 200cc ghosts, especially in comparison to 150cc. That said, I wouldn't really say I struggled too much on Toad Harbor, more of just, I was really bad. And I mean, really bad. Thankfully, third try is a charm and I did end up getting it. Now, there's one thing I want to bring up about the time trials, specifically one of the unlockables that you get for it. I've seen quite a few people wonder how you get the golden tires, which supposedly you can unlock after defeating every single ghost in 150cc. However, after I browsed the topic on the internet for a while, I've seen quite a few people say that even though they defeated all the ghosts in 150cc, they never unlocked the tires, which led me to do my own research on the topic, as the same thing happened to me. After I defeated all 150cc staff ghosts, the tires never came up, which prompted me to wonder, is there another criteria to unlock it? The answer, from what I found, is yes. So if you've been following my series, you'll know that I've been documenting every single thing I've unlocked as well as how to unlock it. And the thing that I noticed was that the golden tires did not even show up until after I had redeemed the reward for collecting 3,000 coins. So I think that's the other requirement. Yes, you do have to defeat every single staff ghost in 150cc, but I think you do need a minimum of 3,000 coins, otherwise the reward just won't show up. I've tried it on other accounts getting less than 3,000 coins and more than 3,000 coins, but it seems to only show up once you redeem the reward for collecting 3,000 coins. So I think that's the other criteria, even though the game doesn't really list it. And speaking of unlockables, here's what I've unlocked so far. For 2,700 coins, you unlock the P-Wing vehicle. For 2,800 coins, you unlock the Peach Parasol. For 2,900 coins, you unlock the Hylian Kite, which is the paraglider that I use. For 3,000 coins, you unlock the Retro Off-Road tires. For beating all 150cc staff ghosts, you unlock the gold tires like I mentioned before. And for 3,100 coins, you unlock the Tri-Speeder vehicle. One of these days, once I unlock the final upgrade, I'll make a video showcasing every single upgrade in the game and how you unlock them. I know that there's already a couple videos about them, but with what I found on how to unlock the golden tires, I think it might be able to help a few people. Anyway, back to the actual time trials. One course that I ended up really struggling on in 200cc was Bowser's Castle, where it took me almost 10 minutes of attempts to just barely squeeze out a win. Rainbow Road went pretty much the same way, where I had to restart almost immediately. Another course that I ended up really struggling on was Dragon Driftway, where after multiple attempts I very nearly won, only to crash into the side of the wall at the very last turn, forcing me to restart the entire thing from the beginning. About 5 more minutes of attempts later, I was finally able to win. If there's one thing I want to say about the 200cc staff ghosts, is that they are difficult. Well, some of them. I'm not exactly sure how Nintendo goes about approving each and every staff ghost. Some of the staff ghosts on 200cc are extremely easy to beat, like the one in Excite Bike. However, there are others, like the one in Bowser's Castle, and most of the ones in the DLC pack, that are extremely difficult, to the point where I would actually consider them to be some of the hardest challenges I've ever faced in a video game. But we'll get there in a little bit. GBA Mario Circuit was another course that I ended up struggling on multiple times. My first 2 attempts made it to the final lap, pretty much to the final turn before I had to restart, either due to me crashing into the wall or due to me messing up a drift. Thankfully my third attempt was a lot better and I was able to pull that one off. Warriors Gold Mine was another one I had to restart on due to me crashing into the wall on the final lap. Second try was a lot better though, and I was very close to finishing up the base game for the entirety of the staff ghosts. Thankfully, with the exception of one course, I didn't have that much difficulty with the rest of the base game. However, the course that I did have difficulty with, I struggled a lot. I mentioned before that Ribbon Road is one of my least favorite courses in the game, and the 200cc staff trial only proved why I dislike it so much. I think the most devastating loss could be seen right about here, where at the end of the race I messed up the very last drift, making me lose at the last second. After nearly 10 minutes of attempts and almost a dozen resets, I was finally able to squeeze out a victory there, thus finishing off the entirety of the base game. Now, onto the DLC staff ghosts. There's not really too much to say about the 150cc ones, I got through them pretty easily, so instead I want to take this time to say that if you've been enjoying the series, why not subscribe? It's free, it helps out the channel, and you can always unsubscribe whenever you like. After finishing up Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, we have another game that we're going to be playing that will be coming out later this month, so if you enjoy the style of video and would like to see us play more games, be sure to let us know. Also, like I stated in the last video, we have a public playlist that has the unedited versions of the gameplay that you could watch. These videos contain no commentary and instead just have the game audio, so that way if you want to have them on in the background while you work, sleep, study, or go about your day, you can do so. The link to that is in the description below, as well as the link to my Twitter if you'd like to stay updated on that as well. London Loop is the first one that I actually ended up struggling quite a bit on, with me falling behind the staff ghost and losing right at the end, forcing me to restart. Thankfully, after almost 10 minutes of attempts, I was able to get that one down as well. Most of the 150cc ghosts were not that difficult. There were a couple times I had to restart in the DLC either due to me missing a turn, missing a trick, or just running into the wall, but for the most part I didn't really struggle on them. Until I got to Rosalina's Ice World, where after almost 15 minutes of attempts, I ended up quitting that level and moving on to the next one, recognizing my first loss. The next day I did end up beating it, but only after switching around my entire kart setup and after another 15 minutes almost of attempts. I think the biggest insult to injury with this whole thing was because I had played on that course for so much, the game recognized it to be my favorite track, which at this point couldn't be farther from the truth. Thankfully though, the rest of the 150cc ghosts were not as bad. Now all that was left was the 200cc DLC staff. And my word, these were some of the most brutal challenges that I think I have ever faced playing a video game. The first couple challenges in 200cc were not that bad. There were a couple that I lost due to a bad turn or two, but for the most part I didn't struggle too much on them. The first one that I ended up really having difficulty on was New York Minute, where it took me nearly 7 minutes to just barely win. The next one that I really ended up struggling with was London Loop, which had also given me difficulty in 150cc. Going into London Loop, I was really hoping that this one would be a lot easier compared to 150, considering I had spent quite a bit of time trying to beat it on that difficulty. What I got instead was a level that I ended up disliking probably more than Rosalina's Ice World, at least when it comes to the staff trials. It took me 11 minutes and almost a dozen attempts, but I managed to win. And by managed to win, I mean barely. I was less than half a second ahead of the staff ghost by the time I crossed the finish line. One thing that I noticed with the staff trials was that on 200cc I tended to struggle quite a bit on the Tour City tracks for some reason. Might be because of the sharper turns, or it might just be because the CPU knows something that I don't. I choose to chalk it up more of a skill issue, considering that's what time trial is pretty much all about. But hey, at the end of the day I was able to beat them, even if it did take me several dozens of attempts overall. And speaking of tour tracks that I struggled on, Amsterdam, where it took me almost 13 minutes to beat that one. However, if there's one course in 200cc that stood as the bane of my existence, it would be Yoshi's Island. This course, I don't know why, was the most difficult one for me by far. Me drifting the wrong way, me sometimes not drifting at all, missing the platform to go up on the bridge, my drift not lasting as long as the staff goes, me running into enemies, sometimes steering the wrong way or not steering at all. This course was by far the most difficult one I think I have ever done, to the point where it took me almost half an hour of attempts, many of which I had to do offline due to the fact that I ended up getting so heated I had to stop recording for a while and take a walk. But after nearly 30 minutes and over 4 dozen attempts, I was finally able to get that win. At this point, I feel like it'd be faster for me to go over the courses I did not struggle with in 200cc. The next major roadblock for me was Athens Dash, where it took me 13 minutes to beat it. Anyway, if I go over every single staff trial ghost that I struggled on, we'd be here all day, considering that the 200cc staff ghost trials are some of the most difficult ones I think they've put in any Mario Kart game. At this point, there were very few that I was actually beating on first try. Most of these courses ended up taking anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes of attempts each. Vancouver Velocity was one that I had a lot of difficulty on, taking almost 16 minutes of attempts in order to beat. Rosalina's Ice World, which was the bane of my existence in 150cc, surprisingly wasn't that bad. I think overall it took me about 7 minutes of attempts, most of which was me having difficulty steering on the ice at the beginning. Now one thing that you might notice is that during the Vancouver one, I actually ended up switching my kart setup. I could not for the life of me figure out how to beat this ghost. I tried several different strats, I tried several different kart setups, nothing seemed to work. So after about 15 minutes I swapped over to the bike, and I got it very quickly! Who knew that all I needed to do in order to win was switch what car I was driving? The same thing happened with Bowser's Castle 3, it took me about 10 minutes of attempts without getting anywhere. And then the minute I swapped into the bike, I won that. The very last course that I need to talk about is Rainbow Road, which to be honest, was very anticlimactic. I ended up beating that one first try. And with that, we have beaten every single staff ghost in the game, both 150 and 200cc on the base game and DLC tracks. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Now that we're done with all of the single player content, what is next? Well, now that the Grand Prix and time trials are done, the only thing that we really have left to do is to conquer the online. Sure, there's a couple things that we could still do. We need to play 50 matches with tilt controls to unlock the golden steering wheel icon, but that's only available online. Besides that, we do need to collect 5,000 coins in total to unlock the gold glider. But once again, we can unlock that by playing online. And so, for the most part, we're done. I will still be updating the series on the online experience, but uploads from Mario Kart will be a lot more spread out. Probably every 1,000 to 10,000 VR, I'll do an update video to showcase what I've been doing and how everything's been going. That way, this channel doesn't only become Mario Kart related, and we could focus on playing through other games. And speaking of, the first episode of our next playthrough will come out December 21st. We will be playing through a pretty recently released game, so definitely look forward to that. But with all of that said, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, possibly leave a like and maybe subscribe. It's free, it helps out the channel, and you could always unsubscribe whenever you'd like. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a blessed day.